Being able to stop crime before it even happens. Or how about robots serving as police officers to keep human beings safe? Technology is changing the way that criminology is practiced, the entire field in Western civilization. So today our question is, how is tech reshaping crime and justice for better and for worse? Stick around. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rundown. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's so good to see all of my friends here. This is the regular cast of characters, like this character. Hey, Tamara.
Hello.
How are you today?
How are you? I am great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Not as good as my friend Tony, who's always doing fantastic. I think this is the first week that I saw you dancing, Tony, during the countdown.
It's probably the first week that you saw me. But I'm real subtle with my dancing.
You're
but
more of a toe
I'm
tapper.
celebrate. I have a celebration that I'm doing today.
What talk?
Today marks 5 years since I was cleared of cancer. And so
Wow.
There you go, Tony.
It's a great day.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. Fantastic. And there are a few other people here to celebrate with you, like my friend Sky Gleason. How you doing, Sky?
I'm sitting with the rapping rabbi. I loved you in the boogie chair.
Making a mozi.
Ah.
My name is right. Don't get me started, because I actually have a couple. When I was recording albums, there are a few things I always wanted to do.
Yes.
I always wanted to play lead guitar, which I don't know how to do. I always wanted to do a blues, which I don't know how to do. I always wanted to rap, which I definitely don't know how to do. I then did all three of those things on some of my albums. They're awful, but I did them, and I'll take it.
Awful good.
Awful.
I want to do the kazoo with you. Hey.
Lois saved me from this crazy man. Hey, Lois, how are you?
Well, okay, then you can just talk to this crazy woman.
I can't get
I don't
away
have
from
5 years to celebrate, but I have hummingbirds outside, and that's a good celebration.
That's worth celebrating. That's worth celebrating. Hey, Dave, what do you have outside?
Well, we are clear of smoke today. There's a lot of smoke in the northern part of Canada. And when the weather's right, it all comes down here. So I can't go outside. And I have to say, we thought we'd all get cabin fever in the winter, but now we're getting it in the middle of the summer too. And it's just cleared up today. So we were out doing a few things when it was cleared.
Good.
So, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, it's good to have all of you here. We're going to jump right in. We actually have 3 little news stories. They're all little ones. But before we do that, I just wanted to quickly sort of acknowledge, because it just happened, that There is now an ongoing conflict between Iran and Israel, and I just want to put prayers out for the innocent people of Iran, for the innocent people of Israel, for everyone in between. This violence does no one any good, and I just want people to be safe. So, to all of those innocent people out there that are caught in the middle of this, we're thinking about you and we're praying for you. All right, let's do it. So last week, we talked about what we were hoping to see from WWDC. Well, WWDC is here and gone, and I'm curious what your takeaways were. What, if anything, did you see that piqued your curiosity? What do you think about glass?
For those that don't know what that language is that you speak,
I know,
what
I'm
is
sorry.
that?
Yes, WWDC is the Worldwide Developer Conference for Apple, which really is not important to those of us who are not developers. To the developers, that's important. But to those of us who are not developers, what's important is the keynotes, where they talk about the next big things. Now, this is not the time where they announced hardware, but it is when they announced software. And so what we got is iOS, tvOS, iPadOS, watchOS, visionOS, and macOS 26. Which is the new naming convention. It's the year that's coming up. They don't ever want you to think that we're just in this year. We're living in the future, and we have a redesign, which between you and me didn't look like much of a redesign. It was a little glossier, maybe a little rounded corners. Some nice things for iPhone, for Mac. I think that the real magic was around iPad. And if you are a Vision OS user, the new avatars are pretty astounding, what they did with that stuff. But what did other people see, if anything, that jumped out at you?
Well, I saw the influence of Vision Pro on every one of those things, because all of these transparencies, rounded corners, and sort of floating things and multi-windows is the environment you would be in if you're doing your computing through a visor. And the key for me was the iPad update, in which it showed what you have to grab in the corner with your new cursor to make the window smaller, because that's directly taken from Vision Pro. In Vision Pro, you grab the corner of a frame and you can move it or make it larger or smaller with one hand.
But I thought you were just referring to the green, red, yellow, and green dots that come up in the left-hand corner.
No, it's the lower right-hand corner. There's a
Right.
curved little icon there on the edge
Yes, but
of
in
the
the top
image.
left-hand corner, you've got the Mac inspiration there.
That's right,
There's a convergence of all of these different tools. I wonder
Yes.
if we'll
Isn't
at
it
some
great?
point end up with
I love that.
I wonder if we'll end up with one platform with forks rather than really distinct OSs. I don't know. It's interesting.
That's right.
Well, that's what
That's right.
that's what Microsoft has always done. They always had one OS over all of their different platforms, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yep.
And then so that's not uncommon.
Yep.
Didn't
So-
work so well for tablets, however, but that's all right.
In my understanding, that the Mac OS is different because the Mac has much more capability to store things and stuff, and the phones were, bear very little brain. Is that still true, or are the phones and the tablets now as robust a computer as the computer?
Well, they have
Mike?
scalability now because of the C port. You can put a drive onto it, so there's a little bit more scalability there. You can dump things off the device, similar to how you can do it on a Mac.
Yeah. Tony, go ahead.
My-
And
my
then
in-
Sky. Hold on one second, Sky. Let me get
Thank
Tony
you.
and then Sky.
Yep.
I am running 26
No.
OS
course
iPad
you are.
beta
You're on the developer beta?
on.
I'm so proud.
Yes,
Look at Tony living on the edge. What the heck?
I'm running it on an iPad that it's basically my consumer iPad. It's the iPad that I watch content on. It's not a part of anything, a part of my setup, other than it being a monitor for tonight, for my notes for our conversation tonight. But it is amazing.
Really?
Even with the bugs that it has in it, and you see little bugs, but the the opportunity for it to, I now feel like I got the iPad with all the bells and whistles in 2021, and now it it's worth what I paid for it, because it is more like a Mac, and I am able to do so many different things. I am extremely happy with it, with this update, and I will tell you that an iPad running 26 iPad OS will be a game changer for regular people. I'm not talking about us and everything that we do, but you can actually have an iPad with 26 on it, and it will be all that you need for most of what most people do.
Right, with the new foldering system, the new files systems, the new windowing. It's really, really interesting. There was a. Oh, I'm sorry, Sky. Go ahead. I apologize.
No, I'm excited too. So Lois, to your question, my gut says we are moving towards a dumb terminal in the sense of we no longer have to carry the hardware around, because we are just looking at a screen that is going up to some big machine in the cloud or in the sky. No, but so, and the concept of having one interface means you now have a consumer that doesn't have to retrain two different languages. And I don't know if you ever worked with Adobe, but once you started inside of the Adobe products, a Photoshop concept, then you could move to Illustrator, then you could do their desktop publishing, then you could go to because all of the tools are in the same place. All of the menus are in the same location. And so that's, again, the upside down and backwards that Apple is to Windows. That's the value of having one interface, is you have now trained your consumer to buy more products.
You know how after the keynote at WWDC, all of the big tech journalists get to interview different Craig Federighi and all these other people, and I watched a couple of them, and there was a consistent theme, which was what happened to artificial Apple intelligence? What happened to their AI? And because it was noticeably absent in any meaningful way from this, and they are acknowledging that they thought it was going to be ready. It wasn't. It's not, and they're not willing to push something out sooner than that. I have been playing with something pretty, I think is interesting. It's called the Dia browser. So for those of you who you may know about the Arc browser, excuse me. So the Arc browser was something that came out a few years ago. It was the big thing was the tabs were on the side, and there were different ways to organize your stuff. It was kind of a reimagining of the browser experience. Well, this is their new thing, and it's called. Well, that's not very helpful. Why is it not showing anything? Why you're supposed to be seeing my display? There we go. So this is the Dia browser. I actually want to extend this so you can see the top. There we go. So it looks a lot like most other browsers, actually, right? It looks like a lot like Chrome. It is a Chromium fork. But here's the big thing about it. On any page, these are our show notes. If I just do Command E, it brings up this side panel, which I can see is cut off a little, but that's okay. You've got the idea. And I can say in the side panel, what is the main topic for tonight's discussion? Now, I haven't given it any information about anything, but because it's built into the browser and it can see the screen that I'm on. Let me make this a little smaller so you can see a little better. I apologize. Hold on. I have to grab it from here, and it's not letting me do that. Grabby. This is not going to make it easy for me. Sorry, I did not. there we go. And I know you can't read it, but it says the main topic for tonight's discussion is how technology is reshaping crime and justice. So basically, it lives in the browser, and anything that is on my page, I can have it. Talk about. I can even at other tabs. So I'm going to at this tab, and what is this video about? This is the next thing we're going to talk about, and it's going to look at that video, and here we go. It's telling me what that video is about. So it's context to where I'm not having to jump between my browser and ChatGPT, my docs and Gemini, or any of that. It's all just built into the browser. The piece that they're really pushing with this is this personalized piece that you can. This is a little bit like memory over in ChatGPT. You can tell it about you, and then it will remember that, and it remembers your search history, and it will learn from all that. So if you were an ARC user, you got access to the beta. If anyone's interested, hit me up on Discord. I'm happy to. I have invite codes. I'm happy to share them with you. But it's buggy. I've definitely had some bugs. But I will say I have found myself using this AI because it's just right there. It's just built in, and it's really nice. It's really
This
nice.
is getting closer to that personal assistant
Yeah.
concept that has been, all of these tools have been trying to get us to that personal assistant. So maybe this is one step closer.
Yeah.
So I will just say, as a theater person, my browsing history is quite crazy. We were talking about this in our writing group because people were like, "Hey, I'm getting a background check done. What if they saw my browsing history? They would think I was crazy." And I said back, "Well, I have an Amazon order that includes both body bags and face masks in the same thing." So I'm not sure I want the vast number of shows that I do a year and the crazy searches that I put into my Google. I'm not sure that I want my AI kind of trying to process that information in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And in a corporate setting, of course, you have to be concerned about, what is it seeing? And, there are a lot of orgs that are training LLMs or these tools on their specific information and data so that everybody in the org can have a shared knowledge base, which I think is really wonderful and helpful. But you're right. There are, I'm sure, a number of different issues around this.
I think, Tamara, you just need a little checkbox says theater geek. Oh, okay. No, she's okay then.
Okay.
Oh yeah, don't.
She gets a pass.
Researching writing. Okay.
David, is this something you can turn on and off? This looking at your history?
That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't played with it enough. That's a really good question. This, by the way, at some point, once it's out of beta, I think will be a paid thing because doing this AI stuff it's really, especially memory, is really, really expensive. Mm-hmm. But that's a great question. I'm not sure to what extent you can turn the history off. I would imagine.
I'm still on the waiting list.
Oh, I can hit me up afterward. I'll say I have an invite. Yeah, now that they put it into beta, I can. Yeah, send me something. We don't have to worry about any of this though, because the robots are coming.
The robots are coming. The
robots are here.
The robots are here. This
my favorite thing
was on AGT. Was it yesterday? Boston Dynamics brought their robots to America's Got Talent. Have you seen this? This is, I don't want to have the audio on because we'll get tagged, but I mean, first of all, I was really upset that the big guy didn't come. The guy who can actually dance. I wanted him there, not just the dogs. But the best part of this whole thing is that the guy in the back left, you'll see in a second, he dies. Like he just kind of falls over and he's just done.
But what's great is the conversation.
The rest of them keep going. Yeah. Right. And then at the end, it's funny that one of the programmers comes out and she's sort of apologizing for him having fallen down. And then he actually gets up again. Wait, so where is it?
Yep.
and upstages her.
Right, and upstages her.
And so the anthropomorphization of, we see eyes, we think we're going to connect. So this is, yeah.
Yeah,
But
there
they
he is. He
also
got
felt
back up.
genuinely
Choreography was
they felt genuinely like sad that like they were all concerned. They're like, wait, it fell over. It fell over. Like it was a person who fell over.
I
the
love
choreography was incredible.
Yeah, it was so good.
Whatever person did that choreography, it was so good and it matched the music perfectly. It was just
Yeah, I
impressive.
think they were all remote controlled, by the way. None of this was autonomous. Like, I don't think that. See, you can
The
see them
music,
standing off to the side there.
There's
to get them in
programmed
and
as
out. There we
the
go.
drone.
Oh, was it just to get them in
the
and out,
drone
Sky?
clusters do the same thing, where they
Yeah.
work in concert. Yeah.
Wait. Hold on. I didn't follow that. Explain that to me. So you're saying to get them in and out was remote controlled, but everything else was. Oh, okay.
Reprogrammed.
Synchronized.
Yeah.
And that's why it was so good.
Yeah,
Anyway, it's worth watching.
it is worth watching. I
And
loved everything about it.
homage to a really good song by Queen.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
And I'm
So-
thinking
Bad for
all
robotics.
the
though.
way to the bank, they were very happy to have their song played on AGT.
I bet so.
That wasn't free.
All right, I need help.
Oh no.
Help?
As always, I need help. This is specifically a TikTok problem for me. I have never posted anything to TikTok. Never. I just don't see the value. I don't know that I have anything worth saying on TikTok. But I scroll on TikTok almost all day. and I genuinely sometimes feel that I'm not giving enough, that I'm taking more than I'm giving. And maybe that's, just the creator bug that's in me, but part of me wonders about the value of consuming versus the value of creating.
Well, this is a healthy reflection. This is a very good sign that you're reflecting on it and you're giving it some thought and saying, there must be another thought here. There must be another approach I can take. And I'm all for that. That's you should be commended for actually being aware that the imbalance is there. And
So I should
finding
start
the
taking
balance is
pictures
gonna
of my
take-
food and posting them to Instagram?
Mhm.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I think the strength of Instagram, though, is that it's a story to tell. And I think you do have compelling stories to tell and you do it in other spaces. So I feel like TikTok isn't a bad step for you. So your algorithm may be giving you kind of just people's food pictures, but there's really, I think it is a medium that attracts people based on story. And it is, if you have something to say, there's a space and a community there.
Do you
So
post? Do you post on TikTok?
I don't, but to be fair, I don't post anywhere. And I also have been thinking the same thing that you have. So I read
Really?
your thing. I'm like, I know that feeling. So yeah, I've been thinking about where I want to kind of hone in on what I want to post.
Now that you mention it, every time I see a bus go by, that big billboard on the side, I feel so guilty that I've read it how many hundreds of times, and I have yet to.
And you're not on it.
Okay, yes, I'm making fun of you, David, because is this a value for you to spend the time? You have family, you have kids, you have responsibilities. Is this where your creative juices are called?
Well, maybe
I got
not,
a bus over here that's needs your
Right.
help.
No, maybe not TikTok itself, but I do think that, and maybe this is a whole other conversation.
Well, what's your definition of creative here? I mean,
Right.
what
I think
is
there's
it
an
that you
interesting
think you should be
conversation to
doing
be had
that you're not
about
doing because
creating versus consuming?
Mhm.
And that our, because of the tools that are available to us, we all have the capacity to be creators. And if, as Tamara said, we all have a story to tell, do we not owe it to society to tell and ourselves to tell those stories?
Oh,
Let's
sure, but don't worry about the audience.
yeah,
Like,
Right.
don't
let's
worry
talk
that there
about
may not be an audience for what you've got to say.
Go ahead, Lois.
That's perfectly all right.
so I've seen shorts in lots of different ways, not necessarily TikTok, but there's a lot of places where you click on something, it's, really short, and then it goes to another and another, another. Okay. So have you ever done collage? For those of you who are artists, you can paint a picture or you can cut up magazines and put together something in a collage using other things. So, what I do is when I see something that is cool, usually it's a recipe, and I go, "Oh, that would be neat to make." I go back one, I set up my screen capture, I turn it on, I go forward, and I watch the recipe come out. And then when it's done, I turn it off. Now I have captured that. I'm not going to publish it, so I don't care if it's copyright problems or not, but I have it and I can do the recipe thing. And have I been creative? Well, sort of in a collage sort of way, I guess I have.
You never had that question before we were able to be producers, that everyone was a producer. You watched television or you went to the movies and you weren't like, oh, you know what? I am not spending enough time making a movie at home. So this is a shift in the fact that we can now be both producers and consumers. And there's good things and bad things about that. On the one hand, we get to tell our stories and it's accessible to everyone. Everyone can tell their story. On the other hand, we are eroding kind of a shared experience of people having a communal experience watching things, because we have so many things to watch that it's very rare that we're all watching the same thing at the same time.
You know, you
And the
just made me
difference
think.
is that
Sorry.
between who is a storyteller and who has a story to tell. I mean, everybody has a story, but not everybody's a storyteller. And
Right.
so I this is back to the value. Is
That's a
it
really
good
good
for
point.
you and your soul? Maybe. Is it going to make you money? Is it going to influence the world? Is it going to change something or whatever? I don't know.
It's a really
Why
good
does it
point.
need? Why does it
Encourage
need to be out there?
Yeah, let me come over. Let me.
everyone to watch last night's episode of Conversations with Tony Mobley,
No,
because Ken was on and talking about exactly what we're talking about right here. And his thesis, if I got it right, is that in order to make the world a better place, he is not consuming, but he's just telling stories, whether it is here's a picture of a sunrise or, here's what happened, dancing kittens, whatever it is, that he's putting out positive messages on whatever social media he's using. And that's his way of changing the world.
Hmm.
But I'm not describing it really well. Go listen to Conversations with Tony Mobley.
Yeah, Tony, go ahead. Oh, we can't hear you, Tony. You're muted.
I am a consumer of TikTok. I also am a contributor to TikTok. I'm a late boomer when it comes to TikTok in terms of content that I've shared. Most of the content that I share on TikTok is conversation with Tony Mobley related. But one of the good things I think about TikTok is, and this is going back initially when it first started, or people first started consuming it, was that there were, Tamara, so many voices with so many different perspectives that I felt good about it. It wasn't slanted in any one particular way. And I think to a certain extent, it's still that. And just going back to last night's conversation, Lois is right that Ken was really pushing the envelope in terms of not consuming so much, but creating your own story, creating those things that uplift, encourage, benefit yourself as well as others. Because his argument was that news in general is a marketing effort by the publishers, by the television programs because there is so low margins in news that they are driven by the ads and they are driven by whatever marketing perspective is behind what they publish. And I think maybe it was Sky that said, if it leads, it bleeds. But Ken said that same thing last night. And in all fairness, I think that is unfortunate for us that is kind of the way things are. But I would encourage people not to lose hope in that you have to be diligent about consuming the news from more than one resource. There is no one resource that I think is absolute. And so it's important for people to consume it from a lot of different places. But I think TikTok, for the most part, it's okay. You know, you got people with various opinions about various things, and that's good, I think.
I'm hung up a little bit on the question of creating, and now you all have me thinking that maybe my urge is not to create rather than consume, but maybe it really is more jealousy. I'm a performer at heart, and I want people looking at me.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think that that does not come across in any interaction that I've had with you, that there has never been this idea that maybe you're fooling me, but
yeah, you're very kind, but I'm a good actor.
I don't think that your issue with TikTok has anything to do with jealousy. I think that there is a desire to create. You are a musician. There's always a component that is part entertainer.
Yeah.
But also, you are a rabbi. And what does rabbi mean? Teacher.
Right.
So I know you know better than me the obligation of dispensing information, knowledge, in order to help people get better. And I would say that is more driving you more so than anything else.
Yeah,
That's my opinion.
And I'm gonna,
you know what?
I'm gonna second, Dave, that you have a gift, and you have a calling, and they happen to match. And so to not deny that gift, but also the question I would ask is, who are you using that gift for?
Right.
I think once you determine that, and then that will help you get where does the ego fit into that?
No, you're
because
right.
You have to have it.
Know your audience, and you're right about that. Lois, go ahead.
So we've talked about consuming and creating as if those are the only two things that exist. I think that what you do, which is somewhat what I do too, is see things, go, oh, that is so cool, and share them with someone else. So you get the message and you stand up and speak. And that's creative, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Victor, who's watching, says he doesn't feel we have a responsibility to create, but we do have an opportunity to share our ideas with untold multitudes. That's what's new, is the potential audience that we have. And the fact that we don't need $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 pieces of equipment to get it to get it out there.
There you go.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing.
We don't?
No, we don't. Sorry, Dave.
I think some of the problem
I've
for
been
you...
keeping tabs on what OH has been costing me, I'll tell you that much. Yeah.
Some of the problems with you, David, is that you have so many gifts and so many talents. So when you think about a TikTok, you might be having the same problem I'm having, which is, where do you start, right? And I think that might be part of your issue.
Yeah, you know what? For me, it's not where do I start. For me, it's actually I can. well, that'll be for another therapy session. All right, I'm healed. I am healed. I'm feeling
Are you?
better, and I want to share something that I just discovered as you all were talking about the Dia browser. So I'm discovering as I'm learning, but this is a kind of a big one. So here I'm on our rundown sheet, right, with our little notes, and I was chatting with Dia over here, and I asked it, "What's the first question I should ask to get the discussion going?" Fine, it gave me an answer. Any AI can do that, but then I have this little insert button right here, and when I press that, it can put it right into my Google Doc.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
That's kind of cool.
That's
And it can
kinda
do that
cool.
to
That's
Notion.
very cool.
It can do that to lots of different things. Now, there's no, like, I didn't set up an integration or anything here. It just had access to it, which again, I guess could scare some people, but it excites me. So, all right.
Being creative again there.
What do you say?
I say you're being creative again.
Oh, yes, I am. You're right. I'm being creative. All right. So here's the first question that it asked me to ask you, right? How do you think technology has most changed the way we approach crime and policing today? And I just want to set the table for us. We can certainly reflect on what's been happening in Los Angeles and things like that. I'm not really interested in the politics of that. I'm really interested in things like big data, AI, surveillance, the use of body cams, biased algorithms, lack of transparency. There's so many ways that technology is having a deep impact on both the way we pursue justice and the amount of crime that's happening. In Richmond, Virginia, they reduced gunfire by 47% using predictive analytics. Unbelievable. So what do you think? What's the most impactful way that you might imagine that technology has affected criminology, crime, and justice?
I have a little story to tell from working in London, England in 1991. I was sent there to shoot a documentary, and a portion of it was in in London. And I used to get a taxi from the station to go to the hospital where this was all happening. And in the short trip that it was from the station to the hospital, I noticed an enormous number of security and surveillance cameras. And one day I was commenting to the driver that, you have a lot of cameras around here. And he goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, we'll count them as we go here." I got up to 40 and he finally started seeing them. He had been driving around that area for, many, many years, but because of the IRA, putting up cameras became a normal thing to do in London, and they have about 2 million of them in the city. So I found it very unusual because in Canada, of course, I had nobody observing me, and we didn't even have traffic cams and all that sort of stuff at the time. But now, of course, we do. We can observe almost all of our downtown by cameras. And we see it now in the popular media. Of course, they're solving crimes by looking at the street cams or the license plates or zooming in on a person's footprint. And so I think the sense that, technology has helped in the way someone can surveil you is a double-edged sword, because it's all under the guise of protection, but is it an intrusion? I think Lois was trying to get this point across earlier in the notes, that we have to have a limit on what can be done to predict and what can be done to anticipate, because you can get it, like with Tamra's search list, you could get it completely wrong and have 5 cops at your door ready to shoot you. So I come down on both sides here. I've seen how it can work. And I was asked to shoot a video of a person being assessed by a psychologist for the purposes of showing that video in court to determine if he could be sent to trial. And I had to have the cover. I had to learn how evidence is handled and how video evidence is handled in a court. And this is back in about 1989. And it was very interesting how they've solved all those problems of handling video and authenticating it and making sure through affidavits and control of the source. I wasn't allowed to show it to anybody. I was the only person allowed to handle it. and I delivered it to the court, and then they used it. But no one else was allowed to see it or look at it, and I wasn't allowed to stop recording at any time. I had to have a continuous tape the whole time with time code showing, so that they knew there were no changes to this conversation. I don't know even the outcome of the court case, but I got immersed in that police procedure and the court's need to have everything be authenticated. And I think sometimes when we look at facial recognition, where's the authentication? If it's not done, then you have a problem.
Yeah, I wanted to, Lois, I wanted to ask you about that. But did you all hear about just today the senator who was escorted out rather roughly from a news conference with the
He was
director
pushed to the floor and handcuffed.
and he was pushed to the floor and handcuffed. And again, I'm not interested in debating whether what he did was right or wrong. What was fascinating to me is that on the news, they kept showing all the different angles because there were so many cameras, not just the official news cameras, but everyone's cell phone was out. I mean, there were just so many different angles from which, and you know, the tragic plane crash in India, the same thing.
Yep.
You've got so many different angles of what's happening in the world. That
in 2011, there was a hockey riot in Vancouver after the Stanley Cup was stolen from the team, and the police asked for the crowd, who they knew were taking pictures and shooting video, to submit to a certain server they set up, and about 1,000 people responded, and they were able to arrest 62 people and put them through the court system based on the evidence that was provided through a crowd-funded request by the police. I think that's the next step. Is, you know, we're going to be not just reporters or creators, we're going to be people documenting for the benefit of the courts.
Oh, goodness, I think we already are. I mean, ever since...
And January 6th, of course, they all did it live to video anyway.
Right, right. Sky, I'll come to you in just a moment, but if it's okay, I wanted to... Lois, I got the sense from some of your comments on the shared doc that we have, that you're very wary of the impact or the potential impact that AI could have in our justice system. Can you talk? Did I read that correctly?
It's not so much AI. There's a lot of technology that has nothing to do with AI. And my question really is, it's sort of like thinking about the old system when you had a piece of paper and there's a chain of command, chain of control, that the evidence is always sent from person to person to person, and you know that at the end what shows up in the courtroom is in fact this document. Now, if it's a digital image, then back in the 80s, Dave was the one who had control of that evidence all the way through the chain. But we're doing digital stuff these days. People do it here and do it there. And if you have 1,000 people all showing the same event, great. But what if you only have one person showing that event? How do you know that it's true? How do you know that you're seeing everything? I'm thinking of on the news, you saw scenes in Los Angeles, and you saw repeated over and over again, the same folks doing the same thing. Now that was, 5 people out of 5,000 or whatever it was. And it was one action out of all these other things. And yet that's what was described to us, shown to us, believed by people, because it was picked out. And I don't think it was modified, but it was certainly chopped up and fed to us in little bits. Anyway, that you asked me how I think about this. I think that no matter what our technology is, the human beings that are in charge are going to be the saviors and the problems. Okay, I want to tell you a story. And I just heard this today. I met a young woman, and she's in a service industry, and I was, one of her customers. And as we were talking, she said that this bad thing had happened when they were in a public place and someone had accosted them, and they knew who it was, and and they called the police, and the police took half an hour to get there, and then the police knew who it was, but they didn't do anything about it. And I don't know what actually happened. I wasn't there, but that feeling that no matter what evidence you have, if the police ignore it and ignore you, you're not being served. So I think regardless of our technology, we have to be careful about how it's used and how it's applied, and equality and all that other stuff.
Sky, in the comments, Victor Hernandez asked, how close to Minority Report are we willing to go? And you had mentioned that before. What do you think?
That's exactly what I was going to lead into. And as you asked earlier, what do you think? It's like, well, we think about the stories that we've been told previously. And so, yes, Minority Report, Judge Dredd, what were some of the other robots of the future? iRobot, RoboCop, Blade Runner. These are all, again, Tamara. I'm looking at the factory town of story that again is some imagination out in the future. But Lois, I think what I do want to reach out to you in love, in the sense that I have been in that newsroom. I have been in Los Angeles when bad things were happening. I have been the person that's responsible for cutting up the image. And again, the news, yes, is there to sell advertising and or get you information. That's a fine balance, and that's an ethical question. But by you telling that story, how are we now complicit with telling the conversation about a perspective of the police's responsibility? The other side of that is the state patrolman that said, look, when we only have so many people, we only have one patrol car, we only have so much funds, we have to now choose whether to go after the alcohol driven, person driving crazy on the highway, or the spray paint guy. And it's like, okay. So I guess I'm trying to flip the other side of that story that you tell, is how do we be gracious, considerate, respectful, and pass it to Tamara. Tag.
I think that there's something helpful about the fact that we're crowdsourcing information. If you look, I had people calling me all week about what was going on in LA, and if it weren't for people on the ground who were not news media, I don't think the full story would have aired. It wasn't airing. So I think that that's helpful. I worry that we are becoming too desensitized to criminal activity because it is so readily available to us. And so that's where I think that if we've not had man on the ground, regular people with cameras, then certain things and injustices would continue without that report. And because what we're seeing on the news is not, it's the most exciting thing. It's like after an earthquake, it's great. You see the one place where things fell over. No one else may have had that, and it's that one place. And when we do that in cases of injustice, we are not telling the full story. And I think it's really important to have the full story and to have regular people armed with cameras. And, but I do balance that with the fact that that is the whole story in a lot of cases. And it's starting to make regular empathetic people less empathetic because it is readily available. So those are the two sides where I both agree with it, but I also worry that human sensitivity is hurt by that in a way.
I'll take that just a step farther, Tamara, and I wonder if it's not only impacting our empathy, but it's I'm trying to be careful with the word that I choose here. The word isn't allowing us, but it's it's making it easier for us to act on our worst impulses, because I can learn how to do bad things far more easily than I could before. And I can be inspired to do bad things far more easily than I could before. And I can hurt many more people much more easily, just through social media than I could before. So
it amplifies that. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
And
It amplifies the opportunity.
It amplifies the opportunity, and it makes it a lot easier. I mean, whereas I don't know. It feels to me like not to take away any of the good things that we get, but I'm not convinced that technology, on balance, is good for justice.
We used to say you fell into the wrong crowd and you learned to be a criminal with those people, And now we are watching people be criminals and thinking, hey, they're getting away with it.
And David, I'd be very curious, as you are in and around influencing different generations. My wife is now saying children are no longer children past the grade of the third grade.
Wow.
They are miniature adults between what their parents are allowing them to wear, putting them in, buying for them.
Yep.
Everybody's got an iPhone or an iWatch, and it's so even our children now are no longer children past the age of 10.
But if we can't trust the news to tell the story, then we need to have regular people telling the stories. Otherwise, they can't get told. So that's and we can't trust the news. They're not telling us full stories. They're not telling us unbiased stories. They're not telling us stories on either side. They're just telling a story. And it's the most fanciful one that they can, because it's really pretty.
Well, they want it to be alarming, yeah.
And
you only have 3 seconds of somebody's attention.
It isn't new that the reporting is only the extremes. I mean, I remember in the 1960s when we had a candlelight vigil protesting a war. And the people who came from the newspaper and from the TV, they saw this huge crowd, this circle of people with candles. And it was really very moving. And I was standing there with tears streaming down my face because my brother was over in Vietnam. And I was terrified that he was going to die. What did they put on the news? My face, because I was crying. So it is not new that people put the extremes of any event on the news.
No, you've got 3 seconds of somebody's attention. So you are going to, again, Tony's quote that he quoted me was, if it bleeds, it leads. That comes from William Randolph Hearst. His job was selling newspapers. At the time, that was the way we got our news. And so there you go. And so the other question, that what does technology have to do with this? I think is we need to bring that question back into it. But again, who now has control of the laws? And what are laws? What are rules? There's a difference. One's internal, one's external. So
and what's a crime changes according to that. Yeah, and we hope the precedent in courts keeps that under wraps, but it's too slow. I wanted to follow up on Sky's thing about, the police have limited resources and all the rest. There's a movie called THX 1138, a futuristic thing, and there's a pursuit by a policeman on foot, chasing a man on foot, but in this corner is the price. And as soon as the price reaches a certain threshold, the police stops because he ran out of budget. And I thought, as a robot, that was really interesting. The robot, we watch a bunch of robot dogs dance, but they should have a meter on them that says you can only pursue for so long and you may as well give it up. So
that was Spielberg's first movie.
I think we're onto something when it comes to the sense of authenticating what you're looking at and what constitutes a crime. And this is a movable target. Different cultures have different ideas. Spitting on the sidewalk in Singapore is a crime, and you go to jail for it. You don't get horsewhipped or anything. You just spend a little time in jail. So where you are culturally and what's a crime is a big deal in the digital age, because we're now sharing cultures across borders like that, where we're seeing the umbrella protest in Hong Kong, and they're finding ways of using technology to protect themselves. And we're seeing other people in Sweden adopting that same technique. So as much as, passive resistance and peaceful protests go, there are some strategies that are relying on technology to be able to help that.
Can we shift just a little bit? And instead of talking about an individual criminal, talk about some of the things that they've gotten to predict, to look at trends, to try and figure out what's happening in the whole society. And it's pretty interesting, the stuff that they're able to do these days.
Well, our police department has an interactive map that shows you all the events that they responded to in the last 24 hours and where they were and what the nature of the issue was. And in my neighborhood, it's primarily people breaking into garages and stealing a bicycle. And we do that because we live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of transient traffic from festivals or from other parts of the city, and they come through our neighborhood and they get real tired of walking and they decide they're going to break into a garage, borrow a bike, and take it. And that we understood when we moved in as one of the threats that we have in our neighborhood. But it's not any more than a property crime, and there aren't really any really violent crimes going on in our city. On a daily basis. So we can see that on the map, that if there is a violent crime, it gets a certain color on the map. And then you can explore what's happening in somebody else's neighborhood. Yeah.
Isn't that what
Tamara mentioned earlier? Tamara mentioned earlier about as a society, as a culture. And Dave, you just mentioned about different cultures have different values and for at some point, certain reasons. So I guess how are these tools going to help us as a society? As again, we go to a stop sign, it's an octagonal color, whatever the text on it is. Somehow we have all socially agreed we are not going to drive straight through it because we have been trained that that's a stop sign.
Trust matters.
Okay,
yeah.
So again. Well,
no, but
which came first?
It's a trust that you'll obey the law.
It's a social agreement and a law. So throw that into the mix.
Well, the question, I guess, comes from who's writing the laws, and is it AI? That's the next layer.
Well,
they found a couple of documents that were in committees here in Canada at the federal level, and they threw them out because it was obviously generated. The guy who presented it had no idea what was in it.
We just had that down here.
He got caught.
We just had that down here.
What happens when the law gets written by an AI and we don't understand it?
We are using. I mean, there's a whole other element of this discussion now that you brought that up, which is how does law apply to technology? And I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. On the one hand, it's how does law impact the creation of technology and the use of technology? But I'm also thinking, and yes, this is iRobot, but how does human law, apply to robotics? And is there such a thing as those 3 immutable laws, that the robots have to follow, right? What is it? I'll never harm a human. I'll never, whatever they were. No?
That was fantasy. That was
not for long, Lois.
Utopian fantasy.
Not for long.
The laws. Well, the laws don't exist. Do you know any robots that are trained on those 3 laws? I don't.
I know tons of robots that are trained on laws. Yes, may not be those 3, but they are trained on law. We decide. But what my point is, there you go. There's a whole new realm of legal work and criminology that's going to have to happen around autonomous machines.
Can a factory robot that killed somebody be responsible?
Right. What about a
Or
Waymo?
is your self-driving car
Right, a
responsible and
Waymo.
not the driver?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ford has been asking this question for a decade at least. When somebody steps in front of the vehicle, does the so yeah, who's responsible? And usually, you're right. I think Dave hit it on the point is where when the lawyer's budget gets to this point, I think that's going to be the calculation. So
Right.
I'm going to
Yeah,
say
I know
thank
you have
you
to
for the
depart. Thank you,
wonderful
Sky.
conversation. Bless
See you soon. See you
Yes,
soon.
thank you.
Bye.
Who was just about to jump in? I saw someone. No? So what do you
We have so much to talk about, David. Where do you want us to go next? Because there's at least 3 shows worth left.
there is. I mean, I guess
We could talk about fraud. AI and Mid-Journey and all that are being employed to report fraud on people. The voice matching thing is now.
Hold on.
Hmm?
AI is. I thought you were going to go the exact opposite way. I thought you were going to say that AI is a source of fraud, but you're saying that they're using AI.
No, it's being utilized. Yeah, there's a case in
discover fraud.
Manitoba right now where a woman took advantage of the fires and said that a warehouse full of her clothing in her line of clothing had been affected, and she was having a fire sale with all the available stuff they rescued. And it turned out there's no such warehouse and there is no such company. And this woman is a fake. She's just a picture on a web page. And she's not a single mom. And the mayor was quite offended because resources were redirected toward helping this fake person than going into helping those who are affected by the fire itself. And so when the news departments looked at it, they found in a reverse search of every picture that it came off places like Temu and it came off places like Amazon, these images of clothing, and that the whole thing was made up. And the giveaway was that there's a shot of a salesperson in a store and the word Manitoba is on the wall behind them, and it's misspelled. Well, nobody would ever do that in Manitoba. They don't use an E in Manitoba. So this was shown in our news anyway recently that everybody has to watch out for this. But this is also happening with the voice where somebody can hear a short piece of Dave and then make Dave sound like he just called his mom and asked for money. And it sounded to my mom that it was Dave. Okay. And then she'll respond as though she's really talking to Dave. But all they have to do is have a few short moments of your voice, so they could have a survey person call you and ask to answer a few questions, and then take that recording and turn it into a fraudulent appeal using Dave. So
and that's
I
that's an advanced. I mean, that's relatively advanced. Just today, I got an email. I can't believe I fell for this. It was a scam, and I clicked on it. Like, I'm usually really good at that, but it was about my dog, and I clicked on it. You know what this keeps bringing me back to a theme that has come up every week, and Lois, this is something that I hear you saying a lot, which is that technology can reshape policing, technology can impact the news, technology will impact medicine. Yes, yes, and yes. If or when we shape technology, that
Right.
all of these discussions, the technology piece of it is what's exciting and fun and interesting to us and new. And what's most important in all of these discussions is the way we create the tech that is going to create the future.
Right.
Because again, it's garbage in, garbage out. Whatever we give it, it's going to give right back to us. And so if we have good policing, smart laws around policing, if we're thoughtful about the way that the regulations that we put in place for the use of body cameras,
Protecting
and
rights
surveillance, and all of that, and the use of AI, then we have at least a better chance, a better shot of getting good results when those technologies are used extensively, and they will be. They are already.
And we have to take responsibility for it.
And
Yeah, we can't just wait for somebody else to do it.
Yeah, Lois, go ahead.
And we have to choose the people that we want to implement things.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I'm going to come down. It's the people that are making the difference.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, Tony,
I'm
why
sorry.
don't you say something? Tony, I can see you wanting to talk.
Tony's up there in the
Gearing
corner
up.
just grimacing at me. Because
Um,
you know what happens every week? I don't even know this. I don't plan it. I don't know it. Every week I say something that pisses Tony off. I say something that just gets under his skin.
no, it's not that at all. I'm really internalizing everything that everyone is saying, and I'm trying to. I'm kind of stuck on this thing, and I've talked about it before. That technology for me is a gateway for people who don't have a level playing field. And I know that we can talk about all of these negative things, but the initial conversation that we were having tonight was we were talking about creation and about people being able to be producers and creators and storytellers. And so I think that that's part of the whole thing. You know, you can't just talk about like Dave mentioned about the taxi driver oblivious to the cameras. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and I left there 40 plus years ago. They had cameras then. But I will tell you, like the taxi driver, it didn't mean much because people were so oblivious to the cameras. If they were going to do something, they were going to do it. It didn't in any way stop crime. It just gave you an idea of who might have committed something. And so if that's the intention, then that's fine. But I would argue that I am embracing technology from the standpoint that I think that it gives us more ability, more advantages than disadvantages. And, I'm one of those people who believes that anything can be used for good and can be used for bad. I just believe that. And, we go back to this whole question that we talked about in exaustium about ethics and this idea of, I was going to say Christian ethics, but I mean ethics, the ethics of how things ought to be and the justice and equality of life. And if those things are not part of the developers, creators, the creators of the LMs and all of those that create the bots and those that do all of the things, then it's not a pretty picture. But I think that the fact that a regular person carrying around a pocket computer that can take photographs, create video, tell their story is wonderful. And to me, it outweighs all of the other things that are negative. And I'm thankful that people have that. So like when Tamara talks about people getting a real idea of what's happening in LA, I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for that. That there is a potential for the truth to be told, even in the midst of how we are desensitized to all of the stuff that's happening in our lives. Again, good and bad.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight and talking this through with me. It's boy, I wish uh, there would be a week when we could talk about a topic like this and it didn't feel like it was so pressing and in the news, crime and justice, and yet it always seems to be pressing and front and center. But
We could talk about how tech has changed comedy. You know,
tech has changed comedy. I mean, I've had to sit here for the past 33 weeks listening to you try and be funny. So, I mean, that's something right there.
mm-hmm.
I'm really grateful. Lois, do you have an announcement? We can't hear you, so it can't be that good of an announcement.
Here it goes. We were talking earlier about being creative, and I want to encourage the viewers to look around in your community for your local public access radio or television or whatever you've got there, and you can help spread the word that you think is important. I mean, I have a radio show on, it's the Davis Garden Show. Who cares about gardening? But it's there and we do it and we've done it for 20 years and it is part of our community. And just the fact of having community voices open to the community is a wonderful thing. I encourage you to check it out.
Love it.
Amazing.
And a special thank you to Grant and Victor and Hershey and all the people who are watching. It's great to see you here. We are here every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And you all are welcome to join us anytime you'd like. Just reach out to me on Discord or go to therundown.show. To all my friends, I'm so grateful that you all are here. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time on The Rundown.